Hello, I'm your host Jim McLean. Welcome to another episode of More Than Pixels on a Screen, a podcast brought to you by the Pantiflix Movie Review website. Now, this week we're going to be talking all things Disney as we continue our retrospective of the House of Mouse's back catalogue. And as always, I'm joined by Banterflix's resident Disney queen, Victoria Brown.
Hello, listeners.
So, hello, Brown. We're going to be talking about The Great Mouse Detective. Now, for the first time in a while, we're not alone because we have Banterflix's, because this is Sherlock Holmes. We need one half of Banterflix's very own sleuth sisters, and that, of course, is Joe McElroy.
Hello, everyone. I am going to be the Watson to your Sherlock.
I love that.
Yeah, just thought I'd slip that in there.
Yeah.
Wee reference for the boys and girls.
Yeah, you know, just way to make Therese feel a bit jealous.
She's having the time of her life. She's away in Berlin.
Yeah, say nothing. Okay, so we're going to be talking about The Great Mouse Detective. It's available on Disney Plus, out in 1986, I believe. We will come to Brian shortly, who will fill us in on all the details of this animated feature. But before we get into that, let's play a clip.
Offhand, I can deduce very little. Only that the words are written with a broad, pointed quill pen, which is spattered twice. That the paper is of native Mongolian manufacture, no watermark, and has been gummed, if I'm not very much in error, by a bat who has been drinking Rodent's Delight, a cheap brand is sold only in the seediest pubs.
Oh, amazing.
Oh, not really, Doctor. We still don't know where it came from. Perhaps a closer inspection will tell us something.
So that's a clip of The Great Mouse Detective. Brian, I'm going to come to you. You, of course, is our Disney expert. Fill us in on the details of this film. Where does it come within the House of Mouse's back catalogue?
So this film came directly after The Black Cauldron, which, if you've listened to our previous episode, you'll know was a massive financial flop for the studio. It nearly bankrupted them. But Disney essentially went back to their roots. They wanted some source material that they could draw on, so they found these children's books called Basil, the Great Detective, and they decided to run with it. They wanted something a bit more adventurous, something a bit more childlike, essentially, because as we know, the characters are all mice and rats. There's not really any human characters.
Don't mention the rats.
Don't mention the rats. It is a fantastic film. There's a lot of references. It's oddly quite true to the original Sherlock Holmes books. It's very true to the characters, and there's some great action scenes that, because this is a first time view for me, I wasn't expecting. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Okay, you sound a lot more enthusiastic than I am. And I'm someone who watched this film when I was younger, and I struggled to remember it. And then rewatching it, you said a key thing. I think it's very important where we place this film. So it's just after The Black Cauldron. That was Disney trying to do something else, be a bit more risque, try and move away from what it had done before. That flopped. So it felt like they came back to doing something that, in my eyes, is very safe. And I think the comparison here to a film we talked about, well, quite a long time ago, was The Rescuers. And I felt like that was a huge success for Disney. I think that might have been in this era one of their biggest successes.
I believe so, yeah.
Brian is shaking her head, listeners. And it felt like they were going back to that idea. That was very successful. Let's go back to this. We haven't mentioned the fact that Vincent Price is involved here. We have him as the villain. Ratigan, isn't that the name of the villain in this? I have rewatched this twice in the last week or so in preparation for this, because it is quite short. It's 1 hour and 15 minutes. I don't find it as charming as I thought I would. But that's me. I will hold back and come back to that. Joe, Brian's been very upbeat. We haven't even asked Victoria what she thinks of the film, but we can get a sense already. Listeners, we get a sense already. She's watched it for the first time. She's very enthusiastic in how she's describing the film, so that tends to mean 9 out of 10 times Brian liked it. Okay, so had you seen this before we asked you to watch it?
Not that I can remember. Part of me would be thinking, maybe I did see it as a child. I just can't remember, to be honest with you. But yeah, I thought it was good, entertaining, fun. I maybe am not as hot as Victoria is by saying it's fantastic. I wouldn't go that far, but I did thoroughly enjoy it. And I I think if I was younger, I would get more out of it.
Yeah, it's a very safe film, and rewatching it, there's nothing that really stands out for me other, and I will say that clearly before Victoria jumps across the table and hits me across the face, other than the sequence with Big Ben. And I think what makes it stand out, now Brian, you will correct me in this, because I read this somewhere, and I actually always thought it was Beauty and the Beast was one of the first uses of CGI or special effects mixed with animation, but it's actually here in The Great Mouse Detective where we see the sequence where they're the inner cogs of Big Ben. And we see Basil and Ratigan, they're having a massive big conference. I mean, we've only started talking about the film, and we're already at the finale. Spoiler, apology. And that's the only sequence for me that feels special. That feels this like, right, I can see why this deserved to be seen on the big screen. Other than that, I think animation-wise, it's on a par for me with something I would watch on the Disney, in the good old days, the Disney Channel, or nowadays we'd watch on the streaming service. There's nothing there for me to say, I need to have seen this on the big screen. But you were very enthusiastic. You've watched it for the first time. What did you see that I clearly missed?
See, I think I'm a little bit biased because obviously I'm a bit of a Disney apologist. Anything they do, I'm like, yeah, it's the best thing ever. But I'm also a massive Sherlock Holmes fan, which probably impacts how I see it. To me, it kind of captures the vibe of 1880s London very well for me. Like, the colour palette they use is very much what I picture when I read Sherlock and Watson stories. But I hate to admit it, but I think you're right. The only part that kind of deserves to be seen on a big screen is the finale. Everything else, yes, it's important to the story, but there's nothing like especially important that jumps out. There's no like artistic kind of creativity that jumps out that you have to see it on a big screen.
Yeah, it's not that I want to be down on the film. It's just that there's nothing that grabs me. And I said the same about The Black Cauldron. I watched it a couple of times, and after second viewing and third viewing, I was like, oh yeah, I think it's a flawed film. I can kind of see what Disney are trying to do, and that's what I kind of enjoy about that film. It's like I get a sense of a studio being pulled in different directions. I don't know, Brian, if you'll know off the top of your head, but we often talk about the old men of Disney, the 9 old men of Disney. Were any of those involved on this project?
Do you know that you say that? I'm not 100% sure. I do know that there was, because with animation there's never just one director, it's normally a team of directors. I do know that John Musker worked on it, and I believe he worked on The Little Mermaid, which was Disney's biggest moneymaker after The Great Mouse Detective. But 2 of the directors, it was their directorial debut, and I think that shows a little in terms of pacing and storyboarding. But as far as I'm aware, none of the 9 old men were involved.
Okay, because it is intriguing. I mean, for me, it feels long at an hour and 15 minutes. Not long in the sense that I'm sitting there bored, but I get a sense that it could have easily been done in about 20, 30 minutes. And I know, Joe, last Christmas we had you on the TV show. We were getting you to review Disney's version of The Christmas Carol. Not the Muppets, but the animated version. That is, about 25, 30 minutes long?
Yeah, it's about half an hour roughly, yeah.
And for me, it was that sense of, it shows you what you can do if you strip it all back. I think there's parts of Basil, The Great Mouse Detective. That's how I know it. Apologies, that's how I'll always call it. Is that I think it does feel a little bit baggy, and it's been fleshed out to justify a theatrical release. But that's just me. I don't know. How did you find it for a first time viewing?
Sorry. Yeah, for me, I didn't really have too many problems with the pacing. For me, it followed, the typical story. The thing is, right, it was very predictable, but obviously it's a children's film. You expect it to be, it has to follow certain story beats, and I think it hits those beats quite well. And the fact that it runs to about an hour and 15 minutes, that's just fine, because funny, I was listening to a podcast with Joe Cornish when he was talking about writing Tintin with Edgar Wright. He was told by Spielberg, make it 75 minutes, and animation shouldn't be more than 75 minutes long. And of course it was longer than that in the end, but that's why it worked for me. It was just contained like that there, because you could even look at animation now. Some of them stretched about 2 hours, even longer than that, and I think that's far too long. I think what it does with this here, it just hits the sweet spot where it's like just in at that 1 hour 15 minutes, and that's why I didn't have a problem. I think it was well paced. It hit its beats at the right time, and like you both alluded to, the grand finale is just the best part of it.
Yeah, I think my major issue with it, I've mentioned that it felt safe, and we put that in the context of what had happened with Disney. But it's that sense, there's nothing special about it. For me, there's nothing essentially Disney-esque. And I think of films that probably would have been released around the same time. I can see Brian already going for ears, because we're going to have Five-O Goes West. Five-O! Five-O! Sorry, it has to be done. It's just my Tourette's whenever I hear that film. All Dogs Go to Heaven. I'm sure there's a whole heap of those types of animation. There's the likes of Fern Gully. There's the likes of
Brave Little Toaster. That one just popped into my head.
Yeah,
Hey.
there's that type of...
I didn't say it's bad. I just said it popped into my head.
I popped like a toaster.
God.
How much do you hate me?
But there's those type of animations, because Disney had always been kind of the studio for doing animation. We start to see kind of the old men of Disney moving out and kind of doing off in other projects as well. And for me, there's no essential charm. I think the charm comes from the likes of Vincent Price as the villain. I think if I'm brutal, I think he's a little bit underwhelming as a other than the voice. It's like the last time we talked about John Hurt in The Black Cauldron. I mean, he's great in what he's doing, but he's not really given that much to do.
Well, I know. I think with Vincent Price, you're on about his voice. I think he should have lent more into his actual voice.
Yes.
Because that has, more of a sort of mustache twirling, quality to it. And he sort of goes away from that with was Ratigan? I always forget his name. Ratigan. And that's why I was like, when you told me, Vincent Price is a voice, I was like, oh, fantastic, and he's a villain. And then you listen and you're like, yeah, I'm with you in that. It's underwhelming.
See, if I didn't know going into it that it was Vincent Price, I would probably go, I know that voice.
Do you know what it feels like? Do you know the Simpsons guy that does the voice of Vincent Price? Yep. It feels like someone doing a pastiche, or kind of an impression of Vincent Price, rather than Vincent Price himself.
Yeah, it's like that Iron Maiden song, 66. What Number of the Beast? It opens with a Vincent Price impersonator because they couldn't afford Vincent Price to do the record.
Is that what that is?
Yeah. That's the reasoning behind it, because they're like, oh, Michael Jackson did this with Thriller, let's do this with our song.
I always thought there was something off about it. I just thought maybe he was having a bad day in the studio or something.
No, it's just not him.
But to counter that, I think, isn't it Barry Ingham is Basil? I think he's great.
Yeah.
He's great in that. I mean, I would love to see more of Basil. And I think he's great, and it's quite, looking at it now through 2023, it's hard not to think of Benedict Cumberbatch, his performance as Sherlock, and I'm not saying it would, but you can see how it has kind of influenced. And I know there's a lot of heritage there with Sherlock Holmes that's been referenced and brought in, but I can see the modern Sherlock there, apart from kind of his crippling drug addiction.
Well, it could have been there as well. It's just like, it's children's film. Maybe we'll just keep it out of there.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as that violin broke when he sat there, he was like, that's the start of it.
Do you know what I will say, though? I think I read somewhere, Brian, you'll probably correct me because you are a Disney queen, in the sense that the film went through a rewrite, because I think originally is that the character of Olivia, the young girl, was going to be a lot older.
Yes. And
she was actually going to be a potential love interest. And I can't think of another Disney that we've talked about, particularly in this back catalogue. Maybe A Fox and the Hound is probably the only other one I can think of. The saddest Disney film ever. It's so sad. Isn't it so sad, Brian?
It's very sad.
It's very sad. It's very sad, Joe.
I've never seen it.
Don't. It's really sad.
Okay.
It's really, really sad. But other than The Fox and the Hound, it's one of the few I can think of where there's not a romance. There's front and center. I mean, The Black Cauldron didn't really, and then in the last kind of 15, 20 minutes, it's like, oh yeah, them two have to kiss. Them two have to kiss. After all that cleavage there in that last one, listen back to previous episode where we talk a lot about the cleavage of witnesses. We talk about the cleavage of listen back to the last episode where we talk about the cleavage of witches. That's nearly as difficult for me to say as the Aristocats, but let's not pull on that thread. Yeah, I think it's great that there's no love interest for Basil or even for Dawson either. I mean, it's just the fact that Sophie's this young little girl. I think they made that choice, if I'm correct, Brian, just to make it more relatable. They wanted someone for younger viewers as they're into the film.
I believe so, because Basil, yes, if you like Sherlock Holmes, you're going to like that kind of character, but him and Dawson are very grown-up characters, really. Like, there's nothing about them that would really appeal to children unless you're odd like me. But Olivia kind of gives that little, like, person to identify with. You can see how she sees Basil, and I think without her, that would have been... If she was older, I think it would have been a bit... I don't think it would have worked.
Mm-hmm. And you do have the voice of, isn't Alan Young as her daddy, grandfather, as, of course, Scrooge McDuck, who we've already mentioned with Christmas Carol. I mean, it's impossible not to hear his voice and have an instant bit of feedback back to my childhood. I'm gesticulating viewers a lot with my hands as I talk about Scrooge McDuck. You know, what can I say? I don't know. I wish I really wanted to be more upbeat and more positive about this because I watched it when I was younger, but I don't know. Which makes it interesting, the fact that you watched it for the first time, Brian. Yes, you have your love for Sherlock Holmes, you have your love for Disney, so this seems like a marriage made in heaven for you. But you've been quite positive, but yet I feel like I'm pulling you down.
A little bit. I'm thinking of it, like you alluded to earlier, The Rescuers. That was my first time ever watching that, and it's now in my top 10 favourites because it's so charming. And yes, I enjoyed The Great Mouse Detective, but it doesn't have... It's the Disney-specific charm it's lacking a little bit.
It doesn't even have the charm of the opening of The Rescuers, where you've got those sequences of scenes where the bottle is for Penny, is going through the ocean, looking, waiting to be discovered. There's nothing like that in the opening of this. It just kind of opens, isn't it?
Yeah, it just kind of starts.
It starts. We have Flaversham, is that it? He's kidnapped.
Yes.
And then you have Widget, who's a very Gremlins-esque character. I think this is out a couple of years before Gremlins. I'd love to know if he was some kind of influence. Probably not, because we talked like in the Black Cauldron how, it's impossible not to hear, what's the name of the character in Black Cauldron and not hear Gollum?
Oh God. I can't remember his name, but if you know the film, you'll know exactly who we mean.
Yeah, it's important. You go, would he have seen that film? It's like he hasn't said one way other distinctively whether he's seen it or not. But I'd love to know if Widget in some shape or form influenced Gremlin, because he is quite kind of Gremlins.
He's very like...
Yeah.
There is one line he has that makes me laugh. I think it's Dawson stands on his foot or something because he's a bat that has a peg leg, and he goes, "Ow, my only foot!" For some reason, I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah. I don't know. Joe, anything else you want to interject at this point? Anything you want to pick up on what Victoria and I have chatted about?
Not particularly. Like, that's what I mean. It's
that's good.
I know I'm a great guest, aren't I? Yeah. Just interjecting.
We'll bring you on. You're someone who loves your true crime, and here you are. It's like, yeah.
Well, it's a pretty straightforward thing. There's not much investigating that needs to be done, when you think about it for Sherlock. It's like, they have, what's her name again? Olivia. Yeah, they have, they have Olivia's grandfather, and then Olivia's come for help, and he's like, "Nah, I'm not doing it." And he's like, "Okay, I'll do it." And then they kind of just find by investigating a little bit of it. When I think of Sherlock, I think of big stories, and he has to really use his intellect a lot to solve little clues as to how to find people. In terms of what was presented in the Moffat show. When he would look at something and then he's able to solve by one little detail. You didn't really get it with this here, but at the same time, I'm going back to that original argument. I don't think children would appreciate that as much.
There's one scene where it kind of alludes to that, where they get Fidget's list off of him, he's able to tell you exactly the kind of paper. He's able to use chemistry to figure out where a very distinctive part of the paper is from, and it does the whole big sequence of the liquid kind of moving through all the vials and changing colour. That's very Sherlock, but that's the only kind of ingenuity we kind of see from him. You
kind of see that in the sequence where they're escaping the trap near the end of the film, where it's like you have kind of Basil kind of since like, right, it's like he's defeated, and then almost kind of is like, right, I know exactly what to do. We'll make the trap go off.
And it goes off.
And they're saved.
But they're fine, yeah. But yeah, well, maybe that's just me being pernickety and just finding little things to poke at the film. But see, that's the thing. Like, my whole experience with this sort of era of Disney, it's null and void. Because I don't remember any. I don't remember Black Cauldron, Fox and the Hound, all of that their stuff. This is probably the first one I properly watched from start to finish.
Just go home and watch The Rescuers.
So yeah,
Yes,
that's what I was
please
going to
do.
say. Right, Rescuers is the one that's top of the list. So coming in this, and when I was trying to really focus on, okay, well, because based on listening to you guys talk about these other films previously, I was like, okay, let's focus on the animation, because you were saying like a lot of that was stripped back and budgets were cut and stuff like that. There's a moment, I think it's during the Ratigan sort of like party where he announces his devious plan. Like it's supposed to be a party, but all the background characters are just standing still. And I was going, wait, has he done something in the room? Like, why are these like background characters not moving, or even in a perpetual loop where they would like say move back and forth like that? Is they're literally just going like that?
I am curious, just as a fellow Vincent Price fan, did you get the kind of feeling that he was a formidable, believable villain? Because there are bits that are quite dark where they feed the mice to
I
that
love
cat.
that. The bell.
That was so dark.
I love I have the cat mentioned on my list of things I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, no. Well, we can get that eventually, but that idea and that devious sign of that's very
like
true
for
to
a kids' film, that was
Yeah,
dark.
it's like full Witchfinder General. he went full Anthony. No, not Anthony Hopkins. Was it Matthew Hopkins?
Matthew Hopkins.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just to throw in, you're talking about plans though and schemes. His ultimate scheme of like a robot mouse
queen.
Mouse
Yeah.
queen, it's a bit stupid.
I thought it was a bit stupid. I really wanted to
It's
like
very
it.
stupid. I even think it's a bit stupid.
It's like you can only go as far as your cable allows. What are you going to do? Ultimately, what's your long game? Why does a mouse have a human coin? Why does a horse wants to be a cat? These are the problems I bring to you, Brian, in these podcasts when I listen.
It seems too intricate for what he wants to do. It's so like he's going such an arse about face way of getting what he wants. And there is
What is it he wants, though?
He just wants power.
Yeah.
But like to what end?
Because I think, does he not allude to empire and everything? He's like, I'm going to be head of the British
Yeah.
Empire, so he probably would want to expand again and
But
take over the
does
world.
he want
I
to
don't know.
replace the Mouse Queen?
I think
I
he
think
does.
so.
Yeah,
There's a
but
whole bit
even
that-
that's the problem.
There's
It's
a little
not
bit
clear.
that I wanted to ask is because obviously all the characters are mice except for him, and
Mhm.
anytime someone refers to him as a rat, he gets really angry. I don't feel like that paid off in any kind
know,
of
that could have been
meaningful way.
yeah.
That could have been really powerful.
Yeah, that could have been one of the reasons why he saw powers. Like, well, you know what? I'm being treated as an outsider, as a rat, so I'm going to rule over you all as a rat.
Yeah.
But yet then, coming back to the sequence in Big Ben, and again, it's great, but then there's no real payoff for it, is when Basil and Ratigan are confronting each other, and then when Basil's about to be saved, we see Ratigan becoming quite, just accepting that he's a rat.
Yes, he removes that kind of civil side of him and just embraces like the rat side
comes
of him.
But yeah,
feral,
as soon as he gets
Yeah.
to the top of Big Ben, it's almost, he's back to Ratigan again. He's not really back to scary villain.
Yeah.
I just wonder, and I know we're looking back, it's kind of what we're doing in this retrospective, how much of this is a reaction to the Black Cauldron? Oh, can't have it too scary. Can't have it too risque, because I know there's a cabaret act that they
Stupid sexy mouse.
sexy
Sexy
mouse.
mouse.
But and putting it back, I've already mentioned the cleavage of Thorn witches in the Black Cauldron. You know, that's no issue. But we have a cabaret, and it's not really even that risque.
No, it's just mouse arse.
But they did. They wanted to have that cut because they thought it was too racy, and you're just like, really? After
it's not that bad.
after the
No.
witches' cleavage in the last film?
Like, this is very tame, probably, in comparison to that there. Like, I haven't seen the Black Cauldron, but the way you are describing it, this seems really, really tame.
90% boob.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of boob for a Disney film.
And
Right.
you go and you consider you had no issue with that. I know the Black Cauldron had a lot of issues. Listen to previous podcast about that when Victoria and I chatted about that. But I just get surprised. It just seems like they have tried to. It went wrong with the Black Cauldron. It didn't work. It's like, right, we're going to do something that is so safe. And I think is after this we have Oliver.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, Oliver is another anime. I mean, I have a fondness for it because I remember it. And I know you've talked about the opening sequence of Oliver. If we really push Brian really hard, we might make her cry.
Yeah, go for it.
But there's just nothing in this. And I come back to that phrase, and I know I bore myself talking about it. There's nothing in this film that really forces an emotional response from me. And I'm someone who watched this, has had, I should say, rose-tinted glasses, and I remember watching this. I remember renting this from Extravision because I just went through that stage of just want to watch so much from Disney. I don't think we ever owned it. No, we definitely rented it when I was younger. It's not like The Rescuers where my mum were like, right, you've got to watch this. There you go. And I watched it on repeat and repeat. Then, of course, we had the sequel with The Rescuers, which I'm sure at some point we will talk about, The Rescuers Down Under. But I don't know. My reaction to this and looking at this now is that it's a film that is playing it so safe. It's almost like in the same way with Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, that reaction to The Last Jedi. It's like, right, okay. And I know it's different. It's about fan service. This is about playing to your audience. And looking and say, well, this is The Rescuers. It was such a big success. They love the mice. They love the mices. Let's go back to that. I don't know. That's just my gut.
That makes sense. Like, you can, like with films, you can either take them in isolation for what they are, like in that little chasm, or you can think about them in the context of when they were made. And you're right, it's them harking back to something safe that was a big moneymaker for them. I know this did make them a lot of money, but is that only in comparison to how bad The Black Cauldron did?
Well, yeah, no, sort of to that point, like you said, right, we're going to go back to using mice. We're going to take a well-versed character in terms of Sherlock Holmes, and that they're trying to hit all these beats, which would, they would think would prove popular after something like The Black Cauldron comes out, so even the, stuff that happens in the film will play it safe, will not make it too scary, will, make these characters follow these certain beats and stuff like that there, to the point where, it does come out just being, you just watch it and then you shrug your shoulders going, no, that was all right.
Yeah.
Like, there's no risks taken in
it's
trying
fine.
to do something.
It's perfectly serviceable.
Yeah.
That's it. It's serviceable. That's the issue with it.
But my feeling is that watching it, it feels like Disney doing babysitting duties. It's like you will plonk your kids down and watch it. They'll not be scared. They might be entertained. They might be a little bit scared. I mean, there's that sequence, as I say, in Big Ben where we see Ratigan embracing his rat side, his rat self. And it stands out because you can almost see like the animators having fun, if that's the right way of putting it, of being able to stamp their personality on it. But to me, it just feels like an hour and 15, you can plonk the kids down in front of it. You can go off and do something else. It's fine. They're not going to come out traumatized by the Cauldron Born like in the last film.
No, that's it. Yeah, it's just very vanilla. That's probably the best way to describe it. It's just vanilla, plain. You get, you get what you expect and nothing more. So that's what I mean. I was hoping for more when you'd mentioned it, and you'd mentioned like Vincent Price and all that there. I was like, oh, this could be fun. It's sort of a Disney animation doing Sherlock Holmes, Vincent Price, and so on and so forth. And then I was like, it's just all right.
I really feel Vincent Price was underused, or I'd love to know his reasoning for wanting to do it.
Because apparently he always wanted to be in a Disney film.
I was assuming just for children, just to sort of know, just to know that aspect, that side of him as an actor. Because up to that point, he's mainly known for his different horrors and stuff like that. There, so it'd be more of an adult audience that would know him compared to younger audiences.
Yeah, like Vincent Price playing the villain isn't exactly a selling point for children.
Yeah,
but it was a selling point for you as a fan of him as an adult.
Well, yeah, that but that's just me with that sort of knowledge, and then I suppose that's another marketing point as to why they maybe had him as the villain. Older audiences were like, "Oh, Vincent Price, I like him from this, that, and the other, so I'll bring the kids along to enjoy this here." But that'd be a very niche audience in and of itself, to be honest, for the time.
Well, you never know. And you guys are both Sherlock Holmes fan. Sorry, not fan. You guys are both Sherlock Holmes fans.
Yeah, well, probably Victoria be more so than me. Like, my fandom of it comes from the TV show and the Guy Ritchie films.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're still fans of Sherlock Holmes, but there is the nods, isn't it? Basil Rathbone? I mean, he's in there in archive footage as Sherlock, which is a nice little nod. And I think that might have been his last... I mean, I know it was archive footage that was released after his death, so it's a nice little nod to the heritage of Sherlock Holmes. Again, coming back to what Joe said, I mean, I think a lot of kids, that'll go over their heads. But it's there for parents.
But for their parents are going to go, oh, I watched Basil Rathbone's Sherlock as a kid. Like, this is Disney, maybe my kid, this is my way of getting my kids into Sherlock Holmes. But I think, like, something that we've talked about a lot in this retrospective is Disney gateways.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, there's nothing in this that if you plonk your kids down in front of it, they're going to be traumatized, but there's nothing particularly, like, lovable about it. Like, it's not Winnie the Pooh.
No.
It's not Robin Hood.
No.
I don't know, it lacks something. Like Joe said, it hits the beats, it's very serviceable, but that's kind of it.
It's serviceable, but there's nothing outstanding about the animation beyond the sequence in Big Ben. And I think it's the fact that just feels, it almost feels like you flick the channel, because it's like the scale, whether that's just a budget thing, I don't know, but the scale of that small sequence in comparison to everything else in the film is just on a different level. Like the cogs of everything going on, and you kind of see them kind of going round, and probably the complication of doing that at the time. And I mean, I was in my head, and we've mentioned Sherlock Holmes, because around that time, we would have probably had young Sherlock Holmes, which I know was a flop on its release. I love that film. I absolutely love young Sherlock Holmes. And there's that sequence, it's an early sequence with Pixar, or when it would go on to be Pixar, with the stained glass window.
Yeah, I think it was the first live action film to use CGI.
Yeah.
With that moment that you're referring to.
Oh my god.
And it had flopped. Mm-hmm. It had flopped, and that, I think, played into... I mean, that's why they wanted to kind of just recall the film, the Great Mouse Detective. They didn't want to go on the kind of Sherlock Holmes angle. I don't know. It's... Coming back to, I mean, repeat ad nauseum what Joe said, it's serviceable. There's other films I would recommend above it, but if you're going to plonk kids down to watch it, you're not going to have any big, deep, meaningful conversations about why did that person not make it? Why XYZ? What are the Cauldron born? I don't think you're going to be creeped out by the end of watching this.
No, not at all. Like, the only thing remotely close to that is what was sort of alluded to with the cat. But that's about it. But even that is...
But even the cat, I mean, it's
off screen. Like,
what I love about that is the cats, what they're doing with the cat. It's coming back to, it's the whole point, and my problem with the film is like, that sequence is horrific in what it's doing. I mean, he's literally, someone disagrees with him, so it's like, I'm going to feed you to my cat.
Ding, ding.
But the cat should be scary. But
yeah,
it's just big...
She's weirdly feminine, like she's kind of like loving it, but I feel like she should be a bit more menacing or something.
Yeah, there's nothing... It's
no sharp teeth, no menacing eyes, none of that. It's just like you said, just quite feminine.
I don't know, she reminds me of the cat, the young cat in the Aristocats.
Oh, Marie, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just... Okay, she's obviously a lot bigger, she's grayer, but it's like, is it a sense of just... It's easier because they had that storyboarded. They were going to use that kind of animations. I don't know. We can't really chat to people. There's no one we have on to talk about it. But I mean, it's that scene again. Come back to it. That should be terrifying. That should be dark. It is dark, but it's also like what we talked about with the Black Cauldron in the last episode. I was going to say Joe. On the last episode, Victoria, they pull back and they disarm that with going, well, here's a quite cutesy wootsy cat. She's quite cute. She's got the bow, and she's I don't know. I think if it was released now, it would be a lot darker. And can you compare that to something like All Dogs Go to Heaven, which I don't have in front of me. I think would have been released about the same time, maybe slightly later. It's a film that, again, it's quite cutesy in what it's doing, but it's a lot darker in times and embraces the dark side. Even Fievel Goes West has its darker moments. Some of the cats in that film are absolutely fucking terrifying. I can speak as someone who watched the film at the time when I was around the right age for it. It scared the shit out of me. And I don't know. I'd love to know if anyone watched this at the time and they were freaked out by it. I would be very skeptical.
Yeah. I can't say it personally.
Okay. Well, I mean, look, I think we've talked quite a bit. I feel bad. You started this pod, Victoria, really enthusiastic, and you were excited and you were exuberant with your love. And now it's kind of all just...
To be fair, that's part of the fun of doing this retrospective, because I did go in biased. Like, anything Disney, I'm going to go in with high expectations. And because I love Sherlock Holmes so much, and I love the Victorian era, I think I went in expecting to love it. And now I've talked about it more, I'm like, it's okay.
It's fine.
Okay, we had to just drag you down to our level. You know,
it's like Ross getting over the fact that Joey and Rachel are together. It's fine.
It's fine.
Fine. I'm fine.
That's lost to me. Can't remember. Friends. I'm like, what when you find what?
Wow.
That's a reference for the kids. It's okay. So look, I think we've all agreed we're quite lukewarm about Basil, the Great Mouse Detective, or the Mouse Detective, as everyone else is going to call it, other than me. But what are we going to be talking about next, Brian?
The next film is actually the last in this retrospective series because the retrospective is looking at the Disney Dark Age.
I sense we might carry on talking about Disney films because there's quite a few Disney films, as we've talked about through this back catalogue. That more recent films, like I've never seen Pocahontas. I've never seen, is it Anastasia?
There's three of my favourite films growing up were Pocahontas, Anastasia, and The Prince of Egypt, and Jim hasn't seen any of them. So we will, you don't have a choice. We'll be talking about them.
And I sense that now, as we come to this retrospective of the back catalogue, I'm going to exert my power as host. And I'm going to say we could even throw in some live action Disney back catalogue because I love some of those films.
Is this you trying to get me to watch The Black Hole again?
The Black Hole, Blackbeard's Ghost, any of the old Herbie films, I'm there.
Bit dodgy with the warnings beforehand. May contain uncomfortable racial depictions.
Oh dear.
me and Catherine watched one called The Ugly Dachshund because we love Dachshunds.
Mm-hmm.
Oh dear Lord, there's a horrible Asian stereotype in it, and you're going, no. When it's bad because one of the characters are doing an Asian impression in the middle of it, and you're going, it's supposed to be about cute Dachshunds. What are you doing?
I know, but
it's a
Blackbeard's
60s,
Ghost holds up. I think. I haven't seen it in a while.
Fingers crossed until you see that disclaimer at the start. And you're like, oh no.
The Black Hole holds up.
Okay.
It's got John Barry doing the soundtrack, and it's got one of the most terrifying robots known to cinema's history. But let's keep that for another time.
Yes.
So I think we cut across. What are we going to talk about and tell our listeners a little bit about it?
The last film in this series is Oliver and Company, which it's quite an interesting one because, like we said about the Great Mouse Detective, we had Vincent Price, who was quite a big name. Then we come to Oliver. We've got Billy Joel doing the voice of Dodger. We've got Bette Midler as one of the main kind of antagonists. This cast is huge, and I think its success kind of allowed Disney to proceed with The Little Mermaid, and that it kickstarted the Disney Renaissance. So this film in particular will be very important when talking about the back catalogue.
Okay. And also just going to throw it in there in other Disney films we can talk about in the future. Can we talk about Atlantis as well? Because I love that film.
Is that the one with Michael J. Fox?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
I remember seeing that in cinema.
So did I.
Yeah.
Fond
memories
he's brilliant in that. And Treasure Planet is underrated as well.
Haven't seen Treasure Planet.
That one now, but definitely Atlantis then. Because that's where I got the two mixed up when you said that there. But yeah.
They were around, I think they were actually around the same time. I think you'd enjoy Treasure Planet.
I probably would, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think what we'll do is, as we bring the retrospective to a close on the next episode, I think we will open it out to listeners and other people through our various social media platforms to suggest titles. But the first one we're going to be talking about is The Black Hole. Because it's brilliant and everyone loves it. And have you seen it?
No.
Have you seen it?
No, it's always been on I think it's actually on my Disney Plus list, like the watch list.
We'll have to get you on then to talk about The Black Hole.
Well, you know what's going to happen as well? If you put the feelers out for, live action stuff, they're going to make you do the live action remakes.
No.
And you are going to go into the pits of hell with that.
No.
Don't make me do it, listeners.
No,
please.
you're just saying it now. I know you might choose that, but we're not doing it.
No, we're not doing it. Look, we've done Mulan 2 and we've done The Fox and the Hound 2. We don't need to do anything else beyond that.
No, that's fine.
So, look, I think we'll bring this pod to a close. So, as always, thank you very much, Victoria.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks very much for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode. But for now, until then, goodbye.